Do I stop?
What?
I don't know what happened. I just walked in on her.
Sit up. Okay. Yeah, I had so. Nobody heard any shots or how.
He's the ex-boyfriend of the woman accused of killing her love rival, a world-class cyclist. Kaitlin Armstrong is standing trial for the murder of 25-year-old Mo Wilson, who was shot 3 times at point-blank range in Austin. In this ring camera video taken from a neighbor's house, you can hear the victim screaming, followed by gunshots. Colin Strickland was dating both women. Just released text messages from the suspect show her growing jealousy. "I know you know better than to show up with that girl," she warned her boyfriend just before a bike racing event. He snapped back, "Could you please be an adult?" After she reached out to Mo Wilson, Strickland texted, "Did you call Mo?" She taunted back, "Send my love to Mo." Strickland responded, "Can you please stop?"
These were major pieces of evidence in this love triangle turned murder, according to the state. And they were really showing the relationship and how fearful the man at the center of it all, Colin Strickland, was if Kaitlin Armstrong found out that he had been texting another woman.
Following the murder, Kaitlin Armstrong fled the country, underwent plastic surgery allegedly to change her appearance, and hid in Costa Rica before she was tracked down.
At 8:36 in the evening, a motorcycle pulled away from a quiet residential street in Austin, Texas. At 8:37, 1 minute later, a dark SUV rolled up to that same address. 1 minute. That is all the time it took. 1 minute between Mo Wilson being dropped off alive at her friend's front door and the person who had been watching, waiting, and planning, making their move. And here is what makes this even more chilling. 43 days after a 25-year-old woman was shot 3 times in a bathroom in this city, the person police believed pulled that trigger was halfway across the world. New hair, new name, new nose, living in a hostel on a beach in Costa Rica, teaching yoga, going on dates. While Mo Wilson's mother was arranging a funeral, this woman was trying on a whole new life, and she almost got away with it. This is the story of Anna Moriah Wilson, and this is Live Crime Deck. Her name was Anna Moriah Wilson, but if you knew her, really knew her, you called her Mo. Mo was 25 years old, and by every measure that matters, she was on her way. Not in a "we'll see how it goes" kind of way, in a "this woman is going to change her sport" kind of way. She came from Burlington, Vermont, from a family that didn't just love athletics, they lived it. Her father, Eric, had competed on the U.S. ski team. Her aunt was a 2-time Olympic Nordic ski racer. And Mo, true to her bloodline, attended Burke Mountain Academy, one of the most elite ski schools in the country, the same school that produced 2-time Olympic gold medalist Michaela Schifrin. Let me tell you something. This was not a family of dabblers. These were serious, disciplined, world-class athletes, and Mo fit right in. She had Olympic dreams of her own. Skiing was her first love, but a series of knee injuries eventually closed that door, and instead of giving up, Mo did what great athletes do. She adapted. She started cycling as part of her rehabilitation, and somewhere in that recovery, she found something new to be passionate about. She enrolled at Dartmouth University, earned herself an engineering degree, and then walked up to her mother one day and said, "Mom, I think I want to be a professional cyclist." Like, an engineering degree from Dartmouth, and she chose to race bikes. But honestly, that decision made perfect sense for who Mo was. She wasn't chasing money or status. She was chasing meaning. She had said in interviews that she wanted to do more than just win races. She wanted to bring people into the sport. She wanted to make cycling more inclusive. She wanted her presence in this community to mean something beyond a finish line. That kind of thinking at 25 years old, that is rare. That is special. She moved to San Francisco, went full professional, and within a very short time, she was not just competing, she was winning.
For all of our amazing spectators out today, you can also watch the race live on flowbikes.com. You can download the app and watch on your
leader in the Stars and Stripes jersey. Bring it home, Alexis Scarda in your bronze medal position on the day. So a great ride by those top three women, Wilson, Villafon.
Consistently, races she entered, she finished at the top or near it. She was becoming one of the most talked about names in American gravel cycling, which is an endurance discipline that demands extraordinary physical and mental toughness. And Mo brought all of it every single time. Teammates respected her, competitors respected her. The people who followed the sport could feel that something big was coming for this young woman. Moving on, because the context matters here. Gravel cycling at its professional level is a tight community. Everybody knows everybody. You race the same circuits, share the same sponsors, breathe the same dusty air at the same events. And it was through this community that Mo Wilson's path crossed with a man named Colin Strickland. Colin was 35, well established, well sponsored. Red Bull was among his backers, and widely considered a pioneer in the sport. He was one of the names that younger riders looked up to when they were coming up. Charming, charismatic, known for putting on a show around race events and drawing people to the sport. By the time Mo came onto the scene, Colin was already a fixture. In October of 2021, Mo visited Austin, Texas, Colin's home base, and the two of them began a brief romantic relationship. Brief is the key word here. It lasted only a few weeks before they ended things. Both of them had come out of previous relationships. It was new and shiny, and then it just wasn't. Mo went back to California. Colin turned around and rekindled his 3-year on and off relationship with a 34-year-old woman named Kaitlin Armstrong. Now, let's talk about Kaitlin. Kaitlin Armstrong was, by most early accounts, someone people liked when they first met her. She was attractive, well-traveled, a certified yoga instructor who had gotten her certification in Bali, of all places. She had a background in finance. She loved cycling, which she had gotten into after meeting Colin. And by the time things between her and Colin got serious, they were deeply intertwined. They lived together. They co-owned a business together, restoring vintage trailers. Their finances were connected. Their social lives were connected. Their whole world was essentially built around each other. This was not a casual situationship. This was a whole life shared between two people. But here is where things get complicated and stay complicated. Colin had never told Kaitlin that he and Mo had dated, not once. He kept that detail completely buried. So when Kaitlin would see Mo at events, when she noticed the warmth between them, the ease in how they talked to each other, she felt it. She felt that something was off. And Colin, instead of being honest, kept telling her she was overthinking it, that Mo was just a friend, that she had nothing to worry about. Make it make sense. You are living with a woman, you are in business with a woman, and you are hiding the fact that you briefly dated someone she has to see regularly at professional events. And your solution is to gaslight her into thinking her gut is lying to her. That is the foundation everything else gets built on. Remember that. So Kaitlin is walking around sensing something she cannot name because the person who could name it for her has chosen deception as his strategy. And that quiet, unconfirmed suspicion, it was eating at her. In January of 2022, there was a gravel racing event in Arkansas. Mo was there, Kaitlin was there, and for the first time, the two women came face to face. The tension between them, by multiple accounts, was thick and uncomfortable. Mo, for her part, was not trying to cause problems. She and Colin had moved on. She had accepted their platonic status and was simply operating within the same professional community they both belonged to. But Kaitlin could feel it. That thing she had been trying to put her finger on for months, she could feel it standing in the same room as Mo, and she still did not have the full picture. After that event, Mo texted Colin saying that the weekend felt strange, that she needed to understand where they stood, that if they were just friends, she was okay with that. She just wanted clarity. Now, that text alone tells you something. You do not send that kind of message to someone you have a purely platonic relationship with. There was clearly still some emotional ambiguity being maintained by Colin on his end. Period. And then it came out. Sometime in January, Kaitlin found out about the romantic relationship that Colin and Mo had shared during their breakup months earlier. And she was not okay. Friends described her as physically shaking with rage when she found out. She told at least one person that she wanted to kill Mo. Now, pause right there, because here is what I want you to notice. All of Caitlin's rage went directly at Mo, not at Colin, who had kept this secret from her for months, not at Colin, who had been actively managing her jealousy by hiding Mo's existence in his phone, literally saving Mo's contact under a different name so Kaitlin would not see it when she looked through his messages, not at Colin, who was the architect of this entire deception. Her rage locked onto Mo like a target, and that tells you something important about the psychology of what was unfolding here. But according to people around her, a few months passed and Kaitlin appeared to calm down. Appeared to. She seemed to be coming to terms with it, trying to move forward. And then May arrived, and Mo came back to Austin. Mo had come to Austin on May 10th, 2022, just 1 week before her 26th birthday, to compete in the gravel Locos bike race, a race she was favored to win. She was staying at the apartment of her close friend Caitlin Cash, just in town for the weekend. That was all this was supposed to be. But Colin had plans. On May 11th, secretly, without telling Kaitlin Armstrong what he was doing or who he was doing it with, Colin made arrangements to spend the day with Mo. He picked her up on his motorcycle. They went swimming at Deep Eddy, a well-known outdoor community pool. They grabbed burgers. There is even security camera footage from the restaurant of the two of them sitting there, eating, looking completely relaxed and friendly. Normal, right? Oh, so now, here is where Colin's behavior stops being just shady and starts being something more. While he and Mo are out, he texts Kaitlin Armstrong and tells her that his phone had died and that he had been dropping off flowers for a friend. His phone had died. He was dropping off flowers. Neither of these things was true. He was on a full, several-hour outing with a woman Kaitlin had already expressed serious jealousy about, and he was actively lying about his whereabouts in real time. And then, around 8:30 that evening, he dropped Mo off at Caitlin Cash's apartment on his motorcycle and drove away without even waiting to make sure she got inside safely. 1 minute later, a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera captured something that would blow this entire case open. A dark-colored 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee with a bike rack mounted on the back, slowly rolling past the front of that house. This was not a vehicle just passing through. According to investigators, that same vehicle had driven past the property multiple times throughout the day. Not once, multiple times. This was not a coincidence. This was surveillance. Somebody had been watching that house, watching that street, waiting for a specific moment, and that moment came 1 minute after Colin's motorcycle pulled away. Later that same night, Kaitlin Cash came home. She had been out to dinner with friends, a normal evening. She came through her own front door and stepped into something she will never be able to unsee. Mo Wilson was on the bathroom floor. There was blood everywhere. Kaitlin Cash called 911, and what the dispatcher heard on the other end of that line was a woman in pure, unfiltered terror, desperately trying to describe what she was looking at while simultaneously trying to save her friend's life. The 911 operator coached her through chest compressions. Kaitlin Cash counted out loud, following the operator's instructions, fighting with everything she had. But the first responders who arrived already knew when they assessed the scene that this battle had been lost before it began. Mo Wilson had sustained 3 gunshot wounds. The first round had passed through her hand, a defensive wound. She had raised her hand in the final moments of her life in an instinctive attempt to shield herself. That means she saw what was coming. She saw the person in front of her. She knew, and in that last second, she tried. The same bullet then struck her head. The second gunshot wound was also to the head, and the third shot, the final one, was fired directly into her chest, center mass, passing clean through her heart and into the floor beneath her body. The force of it left a mark in the tile. This was not someone who panicked and fired. This was someone who stood over another human being and made absolutely sure. 3 shots, a defensive wound, 2 to the head, and a final one straight through the heart. The medical examiner's report and the patterns of the wounds told investigators something very specific. This was not a robbery interrupted. This was not a random act. This was targeted, close range, and personal. The level of force used, the final shot in particular, pointed to someone operating from deep, sustained hostility. This was not chaos. This was intention, and the scene itself confirmed it. The door showed no signs of forced entry. Nothing in the apartment had been disturbed. Mo's laptop was right where she had left it. Her wallet was untouched. Her valuables were all exactly where they should be. Nothing had been taken. Except one thing. Mo's bike was gone. Her professional racing bicycle, an expensive top-tier machine that was her livelihood, had been removed from the apartment. Officers immediately began searching the perimeter, and they found it quickly. Just a short distance from the house, tucked into a thick patch of bamboo and weeds, tossed aside without care. Now, why take the bike and leave everything else? If this was a robbery, why not take the laptop? Why not the wallet? The bike, abandoned carelessly in the bushes just yards from where a dark SUV had been seen parked, told investigators that someone had taken it not out of greed, but possibly out of calculation. A clumsy attempt to make the scene read like a burglary, or something even more pointed than that. The bike was the symbol of everything Mo was in that world, the thing that made her relevant, that brought her into their community, that made her someone to be reckoned with. Discarding it like trash, like it meant nothing, that felt like a final insult, a final act of contempt toward a woman who had already been killed. Either way, that bike in the bushes told the story the killer did not want told. This was personal, and the investigation was about to reflect that. When officers arrived at Kaitlin Cash's apartment that night, they did what investigators always do first. They started asking questions about the victim's circle. Who did Mo know in Austin? Who had she been with that day? And Kaitlin Cash gave them a name without hesitation. She told them Mo had spent the day with Colin Strickland. The very next morning, police showed up at Colin's door. Now, in these moments, the moment law enforcement shows up unannounced at someone's home in connection with a death, what you see on a person's face and in their body tells you a lot. Colin Strickland, when officers informed him that Mo had passed away and that it was being investigated as a homicide, appeared genuinely shocked. His eyes went wide. The color seemed to drain out of him. On the surface, it looked like a man receiving devastating news about someone he cared about. He was cooperative. He told them everything, or at least everything that served him. He walked them through the day, the swim at Deep Eddy, the burgers, dropping her off at Kaitlin Cash's apartment around 8:30 on his motorcycle. He said they were friends. He confirmed the surveillance footage that showed them together at the restaurant. He was helpful and transparent, almost eagerly so, but the more Colin talked, the more a picture started forming that he may not have intended to paint. He admitted eventually that he and Mo had a brief romantic relationship back in October of 2021, during he claimed a short break from his long-term girlfriend Kaitlin Armstrong. A break, the classic. Let me tell you something. A break that conveniently allows you to pursue someone else and then get back together like nothing happened is not really a break. That is just an affair with extra steps, and this particular break would prove to carry consequences nobody fully anticipated. Colin also told investigators something that stopped them cold. He said he had saved Mo's contact in his phone under a different name, not her real name, an alias. Why? Because, in his own words, Kaitlin had a habit of looking through his phone, and he simply did not want to start arguments. He described her as possessive. He used language that painted her as someone operating from a mindset of, nobody else can have you. He tried to say it almost casually, like it was just a quirk of their relationship, but investigators heard something very different. They heard a man describing a woman who was deeply, dangerously jealous, and who he had been actively managing and deceiving for months. And then Colin told them something that shifted the entire energy in that room. He mentioned guns. He told investigators that some time back he had purchased two 9mm handguns, one for himself and one for Kaitlin Armstrong. He said they had even gone to a shooting range together to practice. He offered this information freely, almost casually. Let that land for a second. The gun potentially connected to Mo Wilson's murder was purchased by Colin Strickland as a gift for Kaitlin Armstrong, and they had both practiced using it. This was not a weapon Kaitlin stumbled upon. This was equipment she was trained on, that she was comfortable with, that she had been given specifically. Meanwhile, as Colin was talking, investigators were taking inventory of everything around them. And sitting right there in Colin's driveway was a dark-colored 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee with a bike rack mounted on the back. The same type of vehicle captured on a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera, rolling past Mo's friend's house 1 minute after Colin's motorcycle pulled away the previous evening. They ran the plates immediately. The Jeep was registered to Kaitlin Armstrong, and just like that, the investigation had a name. Now there was something else investigators noted about that night. that added even more weight to Kaitlin Armstrong as a person of interest. Her phone had gone completely dark, not just inactive, dark. It had stopped communicating with any cell towers at all, either powered off entirely or switched to airplane mode. In this day and age, a phone that goes completely silent like that with no activity whatsoever is either the phone of a victim or the phone of someone who does not want their location tracked, and Mo Wilson was the victim. So whose phone was it that went silent? Kaitlin Armstrong's. There was also what investigators found when they dug into the digital trail between Colin and Mo. Colin had texted Kaitlin that evening saying his phone had died and he had been dropping off flowers. But through the investigation, they were also able to establish that Mo had texted Colin the address of where she was staying. A text that Kaitlin Armstrong, who had access to Colin's passwords, his email, and his iMessage through his laptop at home, would have been able to read in real time. According to prosecutors, Kaitlin Armstrong was not guessing about where Mo was that night. She knew. She had read the message herself. Investigators now had a vehicle match, a gun connection, a silenced phone, and digital access to Mo's location. They needed to talk to Kaitlin Armstrong immediately, and then, almost like the universe handed them an opening, they discovered she had an outstanding warrant on file, a Class B misdemeanor warrant for unpaid Botox. Back in 2018, Kaitlin had apparently told a medical spa she was going to her car to grab a different credit card and then never came back. $650. She had been ducking a $650 bill for 4 years. Anyways, the warrant gave them legal grounds to bring her in. They picked her up and brought her into the homicide department for questioning. And what happened in that interrogation room is one of the most chilling and revealing moments of this entire case. Kaitlin Armstrong sat across from detectives, and from the moment she settled into that chair, something was off. She was cool, almost too cool. Not the kind of calm that comes from innocence. Not the wide-eyed, desperate-to-help energy you would expect from someone who had no idea why they were sitting in a homicide unit. This was a composed, measured, deliberate stillness. One analyst described her as dismissive. She seemed almost bored, and when detectives began to probe, gently at first, feeling out the edges of what she knew and what she would give up, Kaitlin Armstrong gave them almost nothing. They talked about the Botox warrant first. She seemed mildly annoyed but unfazed, and then came the moment the detective revealed the warrant was actually invalid. The birth date on file was wrong. It did not match hers. Technically, they could not hold her on it at all. She was free to leave at any time. That is when the dynamic in the room changed. The detective pivoted, kept her talking, kept it conversational, and started laying the groundwork. Mentioned there were some questions about a situation involving a young woman. Mentioned it sounded like there may have been some tension. Kaitlin's body language shifted. The relaxed woman tightened up. She started watching the detectives more carefully, like she was trying to read exactly how much they had. When the detective suggested it sounded like she had been upset about something involving Mo and Colin, Kaitlin's response was strikingly specific. That is not accurate. That is not accurate. Not, I don't know what you're talking about. Not who. Not confusion or indignation. A flat, corporate-level non-denial. Cold, detached, and deliberate. Then she asked a question that was not, I want a lawyer. It was, do I need an attorney here? And that distinction matters more than it might seem. Asking for a lawyer is a person invoking their rights. Asking whether you need one is a person calculating how much trouble they are actually in. She was not confused. She was not scared. She was running numbers, trying to figure out exactly where she stood before deciding her next move. She kept angling toward the door, kept repeating calmly that she would like to leave if she was free to leave. Every word measured, every move intentional. And then the detective placed the final card on the table, calmly told her that their vehicle had been seen near the victim's house that night, that it did not look good, and asked if there was any explanation for why that would be. Silence. Not the silence of someone blindsided, not shock, not outrage, not the frantic energy of a person who knows they are innocent and needs to fix a misunderstanding. Kaitlin Armstrong went still. Her face went flat. Her eyes, one observer noted, went somewhere else entirely, like her mind had just run out of exits and was quietly regrouping. She did not deny it. She did not ask when or where or what camera. She just sat there, and then, almost mechanically, she said she would like to leave. The detectives had no choice. The warrant was invalid. The evidence, while pointing strongly in her direction, was still circumstantial. They could not hold her. Kaitlin Armstrong stood up, composed herself, and walked out of that building. No tears, no visible guilt, just composure. And the moment she stepped outside, she started moving. The very next day, Kaitlin Armstrong drove her Jeep Grand Cherokee, the same vehicle caught on camera near Mo's house the night of the murder, to a CarMax in South Austin. She sold it. She accepted well below market value for it, walked away with $12,000 in cash, and did not look back. This was not a panicked decision. This was a calculated one. She needed untraceable money fast, and she needed to eliminate a piece of evidence that put her at the scene. In under 48 hours, she had turned a liability into an escape fund. She deactivated all of her social media accounts. She packed what she needed. And on May 14th, just 3 days after Mo's murder, surveillance cameras at Austin Bergstrom International Airport captured Kaitlin Armstrong walking calmly through security. Yoga mat tucked under one arm, the picture of normalcy. She flew from Austin to Houston, then from Houston to LaGuardia Airport in New York. She was gone. Back in Austin, investigators were moving quickly. A friend of Kaitlin's had come forward, a credible source according to law enforcement, and told police that Kaitlin had been so consumed by rage over Colin's relationship with Mo that she had explicitly said she wanted to kill her. That information, combined with everything else they had, was enough. Days after Kaitlin walked out of that interrogation room, a homicide arrest warrant was issued in her name. And when police went to find her, she was nowhere. The U.S. Marshals were called in. Now, the Marshals are specifically built for this. Tracking fugitives is their whole thing, and they immediately began working every angle. They traced Kaitlin's movements from Austin to New York and tracked her to upstate New York, where her sister Christy lived. A deputy marshal made contact with Christy Armstrong, who said her sister had come to visit, stayed a couple of days, and then she had dropped her off at a nearby airport, believing Kaitlin was flying back to Austin. But Christy mentioned one more thing. She could not find her passport. She did not know where it was. The marshals had a hunch. They contacted their connections at Homeland Security, and within minutes, the confirmation came back. Christy Armstrong's passport had been used to board a one-way flight from Newark International Airport to San Jose, Costa Rica. One way, not Austin, not anywhere in the United States. Costa Rica. Christy Armstrong has maintained that she did not give her sister the passport and was not involved. She has not been charged with any crime in connection with this case, but somebody left Newark on that flight using her identity, and Kaitlin Armstrong was the one who had vanished. Oh, so now we are international. 43 days. For 43 days, Kaitlin Armstrong was a ghost. The marshals deployed 2 deputies to Costa Rica, Amir Perez and Damon Fernandez, working alongside U.S. State Department personnel and local Costa Rican authorities. And from the moment they touched down, they were on a clock. Their intelligence suggested she had been moving around from San Jose to a beach town called Jaco, and eventually to a small, remote village on the Pacific coast called Santa Teresa, a one-road town, a tourist haven full of yoga studios and hostels and foreign visitors who blended into each other, which, for someone trying to disappear, was basically perfect. When the marshals arrived in Santa Teresa, they were immediately struck by one problem. The town was filled with young women who looked exactly like Kaitlin. Armstrong, same height, same build, same kind of long, light hair, fair-skinned tourists everywhere. Finding one specific woman in that crowd was going to be a challenge, but they worked it. They canvassed the area, building relationships with locals, quietly showing photos, asking questions without revealing too much. And people had seen her. They just had not known who they were looking at. She had been moving through the town under different names: Beth, Liz, Ari. She was frequenting yoga studios and hostels, chatting with people, presenting herself as a yoga teacher who had decided to start a new life in Costa Rica. She was not exactly hiding in a basement. She was hiding in plain sight. One local restaurant owner described a woman named Ari who came into his place, introduced herself as a yoga instructor, and seemed very focused on establishing herself there. Like this was going to be her permanent home, not a layover. But he noticed something the day he saw her on the beach during his evening walk. She had a bandage on her face. He asked about it. She told him a surfboard had hit her. That bandage would prove to be one of the most significant details in the entire manhunt. The marshals sent a female operative into local yoga classes to try to spot Kaitlin. She attended 3 different classes across multiple days. She came up empty. They tapped every local contact they had. They had people sending them photos from restaurants. I think I saw her in the background here, and they were following every thread. But they were burning through their leads. They were, by their own account, almost out of options, almost ready to pack up and head back to San Jose to regroup. And then someone had an idea. They posted a fake advertisement on a local Facebook community page, the Costa Rican equivalent of Craigslist, claiming that a hostel in the area was urgently looking for a yoga instructor. Contact this number as soon as possible. For days, nothing. They were on the verge of pulling the ad entirely. And then a response came in. Someone who described herself as a yoga instructor said she wanted to meet. She named a hostel. She gave a time. The marshals moved fast. They rushed back to Santa Teresa ahead of a tropical storm, coordinating with local tourism police, and Deputy Marshal Amir Perez walked into that hostel alone, dressed as a tourist, with one job: get close enough to confirm the identity of the woman sitting inside without spooking her. He spotted 2 people at a table near the entrance. One was a woman. She looked like Kaitlin, but not quite. Something was different. The hair was shorter, darker. Her face looked different somehow. He needed to get closer. So he did something simple and smart. He approached her speaking only in Spanish. She did not speak Spanish. She reached for her phone to use Google Translate, and as she raised the screen toward him, he leaned in, and he saw it, a bandage across the nose, swelling around the lips, and above it all, the eyes, the same eyes from every photograph the marshals had been carrying for 6 weeks, unmistakable. He walked back outside and gave the signal. That is her. Local police moved in and made the arrest. And what they discovered when they dug into the details confirmed what the bandage had already suggested. Kaitlin Armstrong had undergone plastic surgery while in Costa Rica, a nose job. Receipts found at the hostel in a locked box that she claimed to have lost the key to showed a payment of over $6,000 to a plastic surgery facility. Under an alias, she had cut her hair, she had dyed it brown, she had surgically altered her face. She had been using multiple fake names across multiple locations. And she had been doing all of this while living what one agent described as her best yoga life on a Costa Rican beach. Girl, the marshal's own female operative, the one who had attended all those yoga classes trying to find her, said when she saw the updated photos of Kaitlin post-surgery, she was certain if she had run into her at one of those classes, she would not have recognized her. It almost worked. It genuinely almost worked. But almost is not enough. Kaitlin Armstrong was arrested on June 29th, transported to San Jose, a 6-hour drive, and deported back to the United States to face first-degree murder charges. She arrived in Houston on July 7th, where she was received by the Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Task Force and transported to Harris County Jail. The 43-day run was over, but if you think Kaitlin Armstrong was done trying to escape, you would be wrong. Back in Austin, while the manhunt was playing out across international territory, the forensic case against Kaitlin Armstrong had been quietly, methodically building. The ballistics analysis was significant. The spent shell casings recovered at the scene, 9mm rounds, were examined and compared to the handgun that Colin Strickland had purchased for Kaitlin Armstrong. The firing pin marks, the barrel's rifling, the microscopic striations left on each casing when the weapon fires, these things are essentially a firearm's fingerprint, and the casings from Mo Wilson's bathroom matched. According to the forensic analysis presented in court, it was a 1-to-1 correspondence. Scientific, conclusive. Then came the DNA. Touch DNA recovered from Mo Wilson's bicycle, the one that had been taken from the apartment and discarded in the bushes, came back consistent with Kaitlin Armstrong, specifically from the handlebars and the seat. Someone had physically handled that bike, and the DNA said who. And then there was the digital evidence. Through the investigation, it came out that Kaitlin Armstrong had not just been suspicious of Colin and Mo's relationship. She had been actively monitoring it. Because of their shared business, she had access to Colin's passwords, his email, his iMessage account on his shared laptop, his social media. She had been reading his messages. She had seen what Mo was saying to him and what he was saying back. She had watched the relationship in real time from her own home. She had even sent threatening and harassing messages to Mo directly, telling her to stay away. This was not a snap decision made in a moment of blind rage. This was months of simmering, watching, reading, stewing. And on the night of May 11th, when Mo texted Colin the address of where she was staying, and Colin sent his deceptive "my phone died" text to Kaitlin right after dropping Mo off. Investigators believe Kaitlin Armstrong was sitting at home on that laptop, and she saw both messages. She knew where Mo was. She knew Colin had just been with her, and she moved. But the case was about to take one more dramatic turn before it ever reached a courtroom. In October of 2023, just weeks before her trial was scheduled to begin, Kaitlin Armstrong was being transported from jail to a medical appointment, and as corrections officers were escorting her out, she ran, she bolted, full speed, trying to get away from officers on foot. She did not get far. She was recaptured quickly, but the attempt itself said everything. No remorse, no acceptance of what was coming. Just the same single-minded, relentless drive to escape consequences that had defined every decision she had made since the night Mo Wilson died. She had run from a murder charge across an international border. She had surgically altered her face. She had lived under multiple fake identities. She had tried to build an entirely new life from scratch, and even sitting in a Texas jail cell awaiting trial, she still could not stop trying to find a way out. The trial was set for November 2023, and the prosecution was ready. November 1st, 2023. The courtroom in Austin, Texas was packed. This case had been building for over a year. It had crossed international borders. It had involved plastic surgery, stolen passports, fake identities, a 43-day manhunt, and a jailbreak attempt. And now, finally, it was time for the only thing that mattered. A jury of 12 people sitting in a room, listening to every piece of evidence and deciding what the truth was. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Ricky Jones, working under Travis County District Attorney Jose Garza. And from the moment opening statements began, the prosecution made one thing absolutely clear. This was not a case built on gut feelings or circumstantial guesses. This was a data-driven, forensically supported, timeline-locked case that placed Kaitlin Armstrong at the center of Mo Wilson's death with a precision that left very little breathing room. Jones opened by telling the jury about something that most people had not yet heard, audio captured by a security camera near Kaitlin Cash's apartment on the night of May 11th. On that recording, before the shots were fired, there was a scream, a single chilling scream, the kind that carries everything: fear, shock, the sudden realization that something terrible is happening. That scream, Jones told the jury, was the last sound Mo Wilson made on this earth before 2 gunshots followed. And then silence, and then, after a pause of several seconds, a 3rd shot. That sequence mattered. It told the story of what happened inside that apartment. Mo had seen someone. She had reacted with terror, and the person standing in front of her had not stopped. They had waited and then fired again. Jones walked the jury through the full picture the prosecution had assembled. Kaitlin Armstrong, he argued, had been digitally monitoring both Colin Strickland and Mo Wilson for months. She had access to Colin's email, his iMessage, his passwords. She had been reading their conversations in real time, watching a relationship she was furious about play out on a screen right in front of her. She had sent harassing messages to Mo directly, telling her to stay away. She was not operating in the dark. She knew exactly what was happening between them. And on the night of May 11th, when Mo texted Colin her address, and Colin responded with his cover story about dying phones and flower deliveries, the prosecution argued that Kaitlin Armstrong was sitting at home reading both messages simultaneously. And then she got in her Jeep. The GPS evidence from the Jeep's movements, the Ring doorbell footage showing the vehicle circling the block multiple times throughout that evening, the 1-minute gap between Colin's motorcycle pulling away and the dark SUV arriving, All of it was laid out for the jury in sequence. This was not someone who showed up in a blind rage and made a terrible decision in a single moment. The prosecution's argument was methodical. This was premeditation. This was a person who had surveilled the location, waited for the right window, and moved with intent. Then came the ballistics. The spent 9mm casings recovered from Mo Wilson's bathroom had been submitted for forensic analysis. The firing pin impressions and the barrel's rifling marks, those microscopic striations unique to every firearm, were compared to the 9mm handgun that Colin Strickland had purchased as a gift for Kaitlin Armstrong. The match, according to the forensic analysis presented in court, was conclusive. The weapon used to kill Mo Wilson was the same weapon Kaitlin Armstrong had been given, trained on, and practiced with at a shooting range alongside Colin. Not a similar weapon, the same one. And then the DNA evidence. Touch DNA recovered from Mo Wilson's bicycle, taken from the handlebar grips and the seat, came back consistent with Kaitlin Armstrong. The defense did not offer a convincing alternative explanation for how her DNA ended up on a bike that had been taken from the victim's apartment and discarded in the bushes. It was simply there. Her DNA on Mo's bike, at a disposal site just yards from where her Jeep had been seen parked. Then prosecutors pointed to everything that came after. The day after Kaitlin walked out of that interrogation room, she sold the Jeep for cash. She wiped her social media. She flew out of Austin. She used her sister's passport to flee internationally. She moved through multiple locations in Costa Rica under multiple fake names. She paid over $6,000 for plastic surgery to restructure her face. And even after being caught and extradited, she still tried to run, bolting from corrections officers on the way to a medical appointment just weeks before this very trial. Jones put it plainly. Everything Kaitlin Armstrong did from the moment she left that interrogation room was consistent with one thing and one thing only: the behavior of someone who knew exactly what they had done and was determined to never face consequences for it. The defense, led by attorneys Jeffrey Purer and Rick Kofer, had a different story to tell, and to their credit, they came in swinging. Their primary argument was tunnel vision. They contended that Austin police had locked onto Kaitlin Armstrong as their suspect from nearly the beginning and had filtered everything through that assumption, ignoring evidence that might point elsewhere and declining to fully test forensic samples that could have complicated their narrative. The defense pointed to unknown DNA profiles found on the bicycle's handlebars, DNA that did not match Kaitlin Armstrong, and asked why those samples had never been fully pursued. Why were those results sitting untested? Because, the defense argued, the Austin Police Department did not want anything in front of that jury that might redirect attention away from their chosen suspect. They also pointed the finger directly and without apology at Colin Strickland. They laid out the argument that Colin was the one with the clearest motive and the most suspicious behavior. He had purchased the firearms. He had maintained a deceptive, duplicitous relationship with both women for months. He had lied about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. He had been the last person confirmed to have seen Mo Wilson alive, and they argued that the one thing Colin seemed to remember with perfect clarity in his interviews with police was the single detail that shifted suspicion away from himself and squarely onto Kaitlin Armstrong. And then the defense tackled the escape head-on, knowing full well the jury would be sitting there thinking what most people think when a suspect flees, that only a guilty person runs. Their reframe was this: was Kaitlin Armstrong running from guilt, or was she a woman who was terrified that whoever had actually killed Mo Wilson might come for her next, that the real perpetrator was still out there, that she had reason to fear for her own life? It was a narrative, and to be fair, narratives do not have to be airtight to create reasonable doubt. They just have to plant a seed. But here is where the defense's story ran into a wall. If you are genuinely frightened for your safety, you do not sell your car for cash and flee the country on your sister's stolen passport. You do not check into hostels under 3 different fake names. You do not pay $6,000 to have your nose surgically reshaped so that law enforcement cannot recognize your face. Fear does not look like that. Calculation looks like that. Strategy looks like that. The defense's flight narrative asked the jury to believe a version of events that the physical evidence, the financial trail, and the surgical receipts all refused to support. Moving on, because the jury clearly had the same problem with it. After roughly 2 hours of deliberation, a remarkably short span for a first-degree murder trial, the jury returned to the courtroom. 2 hours for a case this complex, this layered, this internationally dramatic. 2 hours. The foreperson stood and read the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Kaitlin Armstrong, guilty of the offense of murder. Guilty. The room absorbed it. Prosecutors described feeling the weight of Mo Wilson's family sitting in the row right behind them, feeling their grief, their exhaustion, their desperate need for this moment. District Attorney Jose Garza later said that when they had learned about Kaitlin's attempted escape just weeks before the trial, it had only added to their confidence. It was, he said, just more evidence of guilt. The following day, Kaitlin Armstrong was sentenced to 90 years in a Texas state prison. 90 years. Before the case was officially closed, Judge Brenda Kennedy allowed 2 people to take the stand and speak directly to Kaitlin Armstrong. Not to the jury, not to the press, to her, face to face. The first was Caitlin Cash, Mo's close friend, the woman who had found Mo's body on that bathroom floor, who had performed CPR while counting out loud into a 911 phone line, who had been living with the weight of that night ever since. She looked at Kaitlin Armstrong and she said, "I want you to know that I fought for Mo with everything I had." She talked about the guilt she carried, guilt for not coming home sooner, guilt that she had not somehow been there to prevent it. She said she was angry at the senselessness of it, angry at not being able to hear Mo's voice again. And she said she felt deep sadness, not just for herself, but for the road ahead that Mo's family would have to keep walking long after the cameras moved on. She was a hero that night, and she has had to carry being a hero in the worst possible circumstances every single day since. Then Mo's mother, Karen Wilson, stood up. Karen Wilson looked at the woman who had murdered her daughter, and she did not look away. She said, "I hate what you did to my beautiful daughter. It was very selfish and cowardly." She told Kaitlin that if she had ever actually allowed herself to know Mo, really know her, none of this would have happened, because Mo would have listened. Mo would have cared about her feelings. Mo was, by everyone's account, one of those rare people who genuinely made space for others, who led with empathy, who could have had a real conversation about any of this if anyone had simply been honest. Instead, Kaitlin Armstrong chose a gun. Karen Wilson continued, and this is the part that stays with you. She said, "When you aimed at Mariah's heart, you broke mine too. You ended her life here on earth, but you did not silence her. Her spirit is vibrant and present, and nothing you do can ever change that. She paused, and then she kept going. Steady, trembling, but steady. You wounded our family, yet you cannot erase who she is. Every memory, every laugh, every mile she rode still lives. You took her from our sight, but you will never take her from our hearts. A mother, standing in a courtroom, refusing to let grief be the last word, choosing love and witness over bitterness, because that is who Mo came from. That is the kind of household that produces a person like Mo Wilson, someone who wins races and still wants to know how she can make the sport more inclusive, more meaningful, more human. Period. A judge later ordered Kaitlin Armstrong to pay Mo's family $15 million in a wrongful death civil lawsuit. But let's be honest, no number touches what that family lost. In northern Vermont, in the Kingdom Trails, the playground Mo grew up on, the mecca of mountain bikers and skiers that shaped who she became, a trail was built in her memory. It is called Moriah's Ascent. Moriah's Ascent. Not Mariah's fall, her ascent. Because even in how they chose to remember her, the people who loved Mo Wilson refused to let the way she died define the life she lived. She was a Vermonter. She was hardworking and honest and deeply caring. She was an engineer who chose passion over comfort. She was an athlete who wanted her success to mean something for other people. She was a daughter, a friend, a competitor, and a light that her community still talks about as if she just stepped out of the room for a moment. Mo Wilson was 25 years old. She had not yet competed in the race she came to Austin to win. She never got to the start line. But here is what this case leaves behind, beyond the trial, beyond the verdict, beyond the 90-year sentence. This is a story about what unchecked jealousy, fed by deception and enabled by moral cowardice, can become. Kaitlin Armstrong did not wake up one day and decide to kill someone out of nowhere. This was months of watching, reading, monitoring, stewing, months of having her gut confirmed by a digital window into a relationship she was told did not exist. And instead of walking away from a man who had repeatedly lied to her face, she redirected every ounce of that pain and rage at a woman who, by most accounts, had simply been honest about where she stood. Colin Strickland was not charged with any crime. He walked away from this. The man who saved Mo's number under a fake name, who lied about where he was going that evening, who bought the gun that killed her and handed it to the woman who used it, who maintained a web of deception that placed two women on a collision course, he walked away. He will live the rest of his life free. Mo Wilson will not. That is the part of this story that does not wrap up neatly with a verdict. Because justice in a courtroom and justice in the full sense of the word are not always the same thing. What we owe to Mo Wilson and to every person whose story ends the way hers did is to look at the full picture, to ask the harder questions, to look at the patterns that led to a bathroom floor in Austin, Texas, and understand that those patterns do not start with a gun. They start with hiding. They start with deception. They start with one person deciding that keeping their options open is worth more than being honest with the people they claim to love. And they end, when nothing interrupts them, with someone who never had any part in any of it paying the highest possible price. Mo Wilson deserved to finish that race. She deserved to turn 26. She deserved to keep inspiring people and changing her sport and figuring out what her life was going to become. Instead, she became a name on a trail in Vermont and a case on a channel called Live Crime Deck, because somebody has to say her name. Somebody has to Make sure she is not just a headline that people scroll past. Somebody has to sit with the full weight of what happened to her and refuse to look away. So, that is what we do here. If this story reached you, if it made you feel something, if it made you think about something differently, share it, talk about it, because the conversation that did not happen between the people in this story is exactly why Mo Wilson is gone. And the conversations we choose to have now are the only way any of this means anything going forward. Rest easy, Mo. You were everything.
Smart, really athletic.
Athletes, I mean, sometimes they're boring. And she wasn't, you know?
I think coffee in any vessel is pretty good.
A wonderful mix of like serious and driven, but also like up for having a fun time.